اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم يا دائم الفضل على البرية يا باسط اليدين بالعطية يا صاحب المواهب السنية صل على محمد وآله خير الورى السجية واغفر لنا يا ذا العلا في هذه العشية بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصاب اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقم اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا، وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكروك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك، ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترت وكم من فاتح من البلاء أقلت وكم من عثار وقيت وكم من مكروه دفعت وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرت. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد أمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي، ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك. ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا، لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شدي وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي، يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي، يا إلهي وسيدي وربي. أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهجا به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك، هيات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت أو تبعد من أدنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعا، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنة ما كذا الظن بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك يا كريم يا رب. وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثور يسير بقاء قصير مدة، فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تزول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها أضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدته، أم لطول البلاء ومدته. فلئن سيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك، وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك، وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فابني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وابني يا إلهي صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته، وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه؟ أم كيف يتغلغل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك، ولا المعروف من فضلك، ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أرتع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المقاندين وأن تجل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تسر يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي عندك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه مقولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي قو على خدمتك جوارحي واشتد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في البارزين وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأريد ومن كادني فكيد واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وأخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك واعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأقل لي عثرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بتقائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني مناي ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غناء ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقم يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بي ما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا. صلى على محمد وآل محمد وعجل.
is off, it still makes noise. So it has nothing to do with this, something else. Bilal's back there. No, it's even when this was off, it was still making noise, so I don't think it's going to make a difference unless he fixed it from there. Huh? Let's take a look. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. So sorry about that. We were talking about the hujjiyya of khabar wahid in non-fiqhi matters, yes? Inshallah, today we're going to hopefully finish with the different opinions we have in this regard. And next session we'll wrap up with just what we're supposed to do with these hadiths that we have. So, Ayatollah Jawadi, he's the next one on our list of views that we have in this regard. And as the more you study this discussion, the more you notice that there's a lot of opinions out there that you haven't even looked at yet. So there's a lot, but this is not a extensive class we're trying to have in this regard. I know we went deep into it, but there's a lot more that we'll be skipping. Ayatollah Jawadi, in his famous book of Tafsir of Tasneem, which in reality is a book that it's his lectures that he's been giving for the past God knows how many years now, 30, 35 years, in which he goes through Tabatabay's Al-Mizan, but of course completes those discussions and gives his own opinions. And so it's a much, much more extensive and comprehensive version of Al-Mizan, one can say, in one sense. And so in this book, he makes it clear as well that he is a follower of his teacher in this regard. If you remember Tabatabai, last session we talked about how he is very strict about how khabar wahid, that checks all the boxes, it is not something we can rely on to get our tafsir from, we can get our beliefs from, and so on. Unless, it's a mutawatir hadith, which we don't have too many of those to begin with. Ayatollah Jawadi says the same thing. We'll read what he says. He says, all khabar wahid gives us is dhan. And since bindingness of dhan is only possible when it comes to practice, khabar wahid will only be hujjah in practical matters. The only time I can make something binding on you, if it only gives you 80% certainty, is for me to tell you to just go and act upon that 80% certainty that you have, right? That's all I can tell you to do. I can't tell you, oh, you have 80% certainty, but have 100% certainty. That's not something in my control. So he says that. He says, as for theoretical issues, a khabar wahid yielding dhan cannot be binding, because in such issues it is a matter of belief. And bindingness is impossible. Yaqeen and certainty aren't in the control of the individual, so that as a result they can just accept or reject a given postulate. One's belief is in the control of their knowledge and burhan. If you want to control your belief, you can't just, someone tells you, oh, you have 80% certainty, well, from this day forward have 100% certainty. I can't have that. The only thing I can follow for me to have yaqeen is my knowledge and burhan, what I see, what has been proven to me 100%, right? This, like when it says burhan, through demonstrative argumentation. For example, this is a ball. All balls are round, so this is round. Okay, this is an argument. This is a burhan. Okay, a burhan gives me yaqeen, but a khabar wahid doesn't give me yaqeen. It gives me 80%, 70%. That's what he's saying. We've said this again and again. Different ulama have said this. No one can walk up to me, even if it's God, and tell me, oh, this 80% yaqeen you have? No, it's 100% yaqeen. No, oh Allah, I know what's in my heart. I have 80%, not 100%. So that's what he's saying. He's saying even Allah can't tell us, oh, have 100%. He can tell me, follow it practically. Even if you have 80% certainty, still act upon it. If someone told you wudu is like this, Imam Sadiq said wudu is like this, follow him. But he might have made a mistake. That's fine. Follow what he said. That's something okay. That's something possible. But someone tells me something, I have 80% certainty that they were right. They tell me exactly what they were supposed to tell me. And then someone tells me, no, you have to be 100% sure. How do I know? I'm not 100% sure. All right, so this is beyond our control. This is what is meant in the science of usul, he says, when it is said that khabar wahid is authoritative in practical matters and not in theoretical ones. He says such a statement is letting us know that with khabar wahid, there is no certainty to begin with. Not that khabar wahid gives us certainty, but such a certainty is not hujjah. This is an important line he mentions here. He says, look, we have a line in usul al-fiqh that tells us that khabar wahid is authoritative in practical matters, not in theoretical ones. We have this line, he says. He says, do you know what this line means? This line is letting us know that khabar wahid never gives us yaqeen. Okay? Never gives us yaqeen. If it was to give us yaqeen, it would be hujjah. The problem with khabar wahid is that it doesn't give us yaqeen. Okay? So a person shouldn't misunderstand this line, he's saying. To think that this line is telling us, oh, listen, the yaqeen that you gain from khabar wahid is not binding on you, is not hujjah on you. He says, no, that's not what this line is saying. This line is saying that khabar wahid can't even give us yaqeen to begin with. Okay, these are two different things. I'll repeat it one more time. There's a line in usul al-fiqh that khabar wahid is authoritative in practical matters, not theoretical ones. He says, from this line, what we understand is that khabar wahid can never give us yaqeen to begin with on its own. Not that the yaqeen it gives you is not hujjah on you. No, if it gave you yaqeen, it was hujjah. The problem is it never gives you yaqeen, and that's our problem with it. And so they can tell us to practically follow it, but theoretically, I know deep down inside I'm 80%, I'm not 100%. Such a statement, I read that, essentially, khabar wahid does not yield yaqeen, he says. So this is in his tafsir of tasneem. But we have a little bit of a discrepancy, brothers and sisters. We have a discrepancy. What is that discrepancy? The discrepancy is on the next slide, okay? And that is a book of his. Did it go? That's a book of his called Rijal Tafsiri, which came out a few years ago. So pay attention to this point that I'm about to make first, before we get into the notes. Look, the whole purpose of writing rijali books of rijal, these books of biographies of different narrators of hadiths. What's the point of that? Well, there's different things that we get out of that. These books are usually, these rijali books are usually fihris, they call them, which is, it tells us the different books this person has written, or they're books of tabaqat as they call them, which we find out, oh, okay, this companion was a companion of Imam al-Kadhim and Imam al-Rida, for example. So these are the different types of information we get from rijali books. But the most important information we get from a rijali book is, and usually the most famous ones are the ones that were in the 5th century. They're written in the 5th century. These are books that will tell us about these different narrators, how trustworthy they are. Okay, this is the most important thing we get from rijal books. Okay, when a person writes a rijal book, that means they are of the opinion, yes, that khabar wahid, if it checks the boxes of trustworthiness and so on, it is hujjah on us. Meaning what? Meaning practically we have to follow it, even if we only get 80% certainty. If 6 narrators have narrated from each other to Imam al-Sadiq something to me, those 6 narrators are discussed in the books of rijal. Why are they discussed in the books of Rijal? Because if I can ascertain, if I can establish their trustworthiness and them being thiqah, as it's called, that means that that hadith is now going to be, and that khabar wahid is going to be hujjah on me. The reason why a Rijal book is written in the first place is for those who believe that khabar wahid can be hujjah. Okay? Usually, these books are written for those Rijal that transmit hadiths of fiqh. All of a sudden now, you have somebody in the 21st century writing a book, Rijal Tafsiri. All right? Which is Rijal, but not for fiqh anymore, for tafsir. Wait a minute. This is an oxymoron. If you're writing a book on Rijal, that means you believe that khabar wahid can be hujjah. And usually these books are written for fiqh. But at the same time, you're writing a book that's about Rijal, which means you believe it's hujjah, but for non-fiqhi matters, Rijal Tafsiri. That means the hadith that we have from the Imams, those who narrated them, we want to know about those narrators of hadiths and see who they are. Well, does it make a difference who they are? Let's say they are all trustworthy even. Let's say that all of the Rijal, that there's about 4,000, they say, narrators of hadith that are discussed in this book of his, which isn't finished yet, by the way. They say it's going to be like 40 volumes or something when it's finished. Let's say all 4,000 of them are trustworthy even. Okay, you open up this book, every single one is trustworthy. Didn't you, Ayatollah Jawadi, in the previous slide, tell us that you don't believe that non-fiqhi hadiths are not hujjah on us? Yeah? That they don't have a practical implication? So what's the point of writing a book that says which ones are trustworthy, which ones are not trustworthy, when even if they were all trustworthy, you still say we can't rely on those hadiths to begin with? Hopefully that discrepancy is clear. Okay? So this book practically seems to be going against his own understanding of an opinion in regards to khabar wahid being hujjah in non-fiqhi matters. What do we do here? What's the answer? Well, I don't have this book. I didn't have access to it. And mashallah, Ayatollah Jawadi's books, you can never find them online. Like the free PDF, you will never find it online. The Isra Institute is very careful not to let the PDFs out, because you let it out one place, the whole world will have it in like 2 days, right? So this, I tried my best. I found some book reviews, not some weak Google review, book review type of thing. No, I'm talking about articles that have been written by scholars on the book. So based on those and reading off of those, I got an idea of what this book is all about, what he's after in this book, okay? He's very clear that in his tasneem, that I don't believe in the hujjiyah of khabar wahid in non-fiqhi matters. Here though, he has this book, how do we reconcile? And so that's what the first point is saying. If you have a Rijal book on narrators of tafsiri hadiths, that probably means you believe in hujjiyah of non-fiqhi hadiths. But in tafsir tasneem, he's very clear about what he thinks regarding non-fiqhi / tafsiri khabar wahid, and that they are not binding, they are not hujjah. How do we figure this out? Well, the conclusion that I could come to was, that this book has been written by him. Well, it's not written by him, his team, or the scholar that's writing it, and he is overseeing it, the project. But what he's doing here is that he wants to give information in regards to the narrators of these hadiths, either for those who do believe in the hujjiyah of khabar wahid, so they can use it, okay, even if he doesn't believe in it, or more than that, it just shows that when it comes to these non-fiqhi sciences, that we can still use hadiths for something, okay? And I've said this again and again, we'll get to it inshallah in our next session when we want to wrap up. You can use it. It's not like hadiths that are not fiqhi, throw them away. Because you didn't hear it directly from the imam, throw it away. No, there's big use for them. There's a lot of benefit that can come our way from these hadiths. The least is that when he goes through all these different narrators of hadiths that are in the tafsiri hadiths, we can at least know which ones the problematic ones are, to discard those hadiths at least. Okay? You will have weak narrations, a lot of them, when it comes to tafsir and it comes to history and these things. You will have fabricated ones. You will have something they call Isra'iliyat, which are those accounts and those narrations that came from the Jewish tradition, because they also had an influence. And their accounts have made it into our narrations. Yeah? Very simple. You'll go into like the stories of the prophets in the Quran, when you're looking at the tafsir of Quran, okay? And you'll find hadiths and stories about Prophet Yusuf, for example. I might have said this before. You read some hadiths about Prophet Yusuf, you feel like, was this a prophet or was this like a normal person like you and I that struggles with the same everyday sins? Okay? So for example, the hadith says, when Zulaykha came after him, he covered, he also was going to do the sin with Zulaykha, but then he saw Zulaykha put a cloth on the face of her idol. And when he saw that, he said, oh my God, what are you doing? Oh, she's like, I don't want to sin in front of my God. And he's like, oh, like a light bulb lit up in his mind, Prophet Yusuf. And he said, oh, if that's her God, and I know that's an idol, it's not real God, if she has that much sharm and haya from it, then I should have sharm and haya in front of Allah. Oh wow, thank you Zulaykha for teaching me tawheed. You know? But the Quran says, إِنَّهُ كَانَ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الْمُخْلَصِينَ. He was our chosen servant. This doesn't sound like no chosen servant. Here, at least in the Shia school, I don't know about the other schools of thought, in the Shia school, they will throw away this hadith. They'll say this is Isra'iliyat. Now here, it's not because the narrator is problematic, because the narration is problematic. It goes against the Quran, this hadith. I'm just giving you an example of what is meant by Isra'iliyat. That tradition has made it into our tradition, unfortunately. And so these ulama have to sift through all of these and in order to be able to tell what is and what is not accurate. So that's the least that you can benefit from these hadiths, at least, if not more. Some people use these hadiths as extra support for their understanding. For example, they will do their tafsir of the Quran through the Quran itself, and then they'll say, hey, by the way, look, we have 4 hadiths that say the same thing. Yeah? And these will corroborate each other. They will help each other out to the point where the hadiths help out the Quran helps out the hadith, and you're pretty sure that these hadiths are true. Sometimes, no, knowing the narrator for you is going to be, or the narrators for you, is enough for you not to just have dhan, but to have somewhat of a certainty even. Okay? So we'll get to some of that, inshallah, in the future as well. But yeah, so there's a lot of benefit in such a book. But in the end, these rijal that are mentioned in this book, they are the same ones that are mentioned in the main sources of rijal that we have, like Najashi, like At-Tusi and other ones. It seems, now I'm going to open a little parenthesis here, it's going to get a little technical. It seems like what they're trying to do in this book is a little bit similar to Mu'jam Rijal al-Hadith of As-Sayyid al-Khu'i. And As-Sayyid al-Khu'i, his Mu'jam Rijal al-Hadith goes and is based on the 4 fiqhi books of hadith that we have, which is Al-Kafi, Man La Yahdur, and Istibsar, and what's the 4th one? Tahdhib. These ones. Here they're doing the same thing, but they're doing it with tafsir. So it's not like, oh, there's some other main books of rijal out there other than Najashi and Tusi and these ones that they're getting this information from. That's just a parenthesis I just wanted to open for whoever can benefit from it. Anyway, let's move on to the next slide. And that is Ayatollah Hadi Ma'rifat. Ayatollah Hadi Ma'rifat, he has an article on this, okay, that he's penned himself. First of all, Ayatollah Ma'rifat, he is known for Quranic sciences. A graduate of the House of Najaf, people like Ayatollah Khu'i were his teacher, and he dedicated his life to the Quran, okay? He dedicated his life to the Quran and the Quranic sciences. He has a book of, I think, 10 volumes on Quranic sciences called At-Tamheed fi Ulum al-Quran. Very famous book, very famous book. If you want to talk about Ulum Qur'aniyya, you have to look at that book for sure. Anyway, he has an article. He now, all of a sudden, goes against the grain. He goes against the grain. So far, I would say most of the ulama that we covered, they were of the opinion that you can't use khabar wahid in non-fiqhi matters. He, on the other hand, says no. He says khabar wahid, let's look at why it was hujjah to begin with. Now, we didn't dive deep into the reasons for why khabar wahid is hujjah. But if you remember, there were different reasons. Some people have tried to use the Quran. Some people have tried to use hadith maybe. But the main reason or the main dalil for why khabar wahid can be hujjah if it ticks all the boxes was what? Was something called siratul uqala. The fact that this is how people would do things during the time of the Imams. They would transmit hadiths to each other. The Imams would see them doing this. Not only would they not discourage them from this, they would encourage them. Yeah, teach our teachings and sayings to others. If there was a problem here, the Imams would have said, don't do it. Yes, there are some restrictions that the Imams or the Quran even might apply here. They say, okay, look, if the person is trustworthy though, take it from them. If a person is fasiq, in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu. If a fasiq, a person who openly sins, brings you a news, brings you a hadith, no. Verify that statement. Other than that though, if it's a trustworthy person, the Imams will let the people do that, transmit knowledge in that way. That was the main reason for why khabar wahid is hujjah. The fact that the Imams throughout history, not just one Imam, they were okay with and they never objected to this methodology of the people and their companions of transmitting knowledge through, yes, either verbal or written transmission. All that mattered was that they are trustworthy, let's say. They're not liars, they're not that type of thing. They're not ghali and exaggerators and so on. Okay? Ayatollah Marifat says, wasn't that our reason? Say, yeah, that was our reason. He says, all right then. If what's really happening when we are given permission to follow a khabar wahid that checks all the boxes, in reality what's happened is the Imams, the Prophet, Allah, they are just validating whatever we do of a method in transmission of knowledge. In other words, they're saying, see what you guys do. How do you guys deal with transmission of knowledge? Let me see what it is. And then our answer is, oh, we look at who, if the person is trustworthy, we accept it from them. Say, okay, that's no problem, go ahead. Validation. Allah signs off on this methodology. If that's the case, that Allah is looking at, the Imams are looking at how we do things, well, guess what? You know what we do? When someone trustworthy comes and tells me something, I don't just practically act upon it. And deep down inside I tell myself, but I only have 70% certainty. I act as if that knowledge that came to me is certainty itself. That's how I deal with it. And so if the Imams are signing off on our method and our methodology is that when a khabar wahid comes to me, yeah, that checks the boxes of trustworthiness, I take it as yaqeen. And so if someone comes and tells me, hey, Imam al-Rida alayhi salam said that the Imams are ma'soom, and I know this person doesn't lie, and he just got back from the Imam's presence, I take this as certainty. I take this as something that I'm supposed to, take as religion and deen. What is all this complication of, oh, but you don't have yaqeen deep down inside? Doesn't matter. We practically deal with it as yaqeen. Because it discloses to us at least 80% of reality, right? We take it as 100% disclosure. So we act with it, we deal with it like a yaqeen is. That's what Ayatollah Marifat says. It's a pretty strong reasoning, to be honest with you. Okay? Although what Ayatollah Jawadi and Tabatabai say is also strong. That's why, personally, I don't have that much of an opinion here. Okay? It's a tough one. It's very tough. Yeah, I think I read once a long time ago, Ayatollah Jawadi said this is what ijtihad means. Ijtihad means that when you hear different opinions, you can choose one. All right? You can choose one. But for a puny person like me, I'll read what Tabatabai and Jawadi Amri say. I'm like, man, that does make sense though. I don't have yaqeen deep down inside at the end of the day. Then I hear what Ma'rifah says. I'm like, man, that makes sense too. Well, which one is it? It can't be both. Khabar wahid is either hujjah or it's not hujjah. Yeah, this takes a lot of work, a lot of thinking, and I will talk about some stuff next week, inshallah. But all in all, this is tough stuff. I don't know. I really don't know those people who say, "Oh, ijtihad, we don't need a mujtahid. We can just do our own ijtihad or do our own thing." I don't know how they do this because this is not easy stuff to come to a conclusion on. Seriously, it's not. He says khabar wahid is hujjah because people deal with it as certainty. And the lawmaker, i.e. Allah, Islam, has sanctioned how the people deal with khabar wahid. We deal with it as certainty. So then that's what they're signing off on. Albeit with certain restrictions. Don't trust the fasiq. Okay, we won't trust the fasiq. Yeah. This is kind of what Ayatollah Khouyi was hinting at as well, it seems, when we were studying him. When someone trustworthy narrates from an infallible, he says, it is as if you have heard it directly from the infallible. Straight up. In Farsi we say, like he makes it clear as day. This is what I mean. Okay? No beating around the bush. Ayatollah Ma'rifat says, if your friend that's trustworthy comes and tells you something that the Imam said, it is as if you heard the Imam himself saying it. Finished. End of story. Tabatabai said the exact opposite. Tabatabai, what did he say last week? Tabatabai said, the only time I can take sunnah as a certainty is when I hear it from the Imam myself. Here he says, no, when your friend tells you that's trustworthy, yeah, it's as if the Imam has said it. There's no difference at all. What would you do if the Imam had said it directly? Okay, you would act upon it if it's fiqhi, but if it's non-fiqhi, if the Imam tells you, what do? You're going to believe in it. Yeah? Well, same thing here. Oh no, but I only have 80% certainty. He says, I don't care. That's not, the lawmaker has said, take it as certainty. Okay? He says, if we don't believe in the credibility, this is another reason he has kind of here. It says, if we don't believe in the credibility of khabar wahid in non-fiqhi matters, obviously the one that checks the boxes, by the way, okay? We have deprived ourselves of all of the words of the infallibles and grand companions and those who came after the companions, the tabi'een, he says. Right? We've deprived ourselves of a wealth of knowledge by saying, oh, it's no good. Yeah? Now, once again, someone will turn around and say to Ayatollah Ma'rifat, just because it's not hujjah doesn't mean it's not beneficial. There's ways to benefit without it being even hujjah, if assuming that's the case, that it's not hujjah. Yeah? But he says, I can't throw away a whole bunch of hadith. Usul al-Kafi, the first 2 volumes of it. Usul al-Kafi, the first 2 volumes of al-Kafi. There's no good, he says, because it's not fiqhi. He says, that doesn't make sense. Yeah? I'm depriving myself. All right. Now, in addition to what he says, we have on our next slide, we have the Lankaranis. Okay? Yes. What's that? Right. 51%. Anything under 100% is done, they say. 51%, 61%, 80%, 90%. All of it is done, conjecture. We're not 100% sure about it, so how dare I say that I have 100% certainty here? Yeah. That's what Tabatabai and Jawadi Amuli say. That's what Muhaqqiq al-Iraqi said. These ones said. But he says, and Ayatollah Khouyi kind of said this, kind of. Ayatollah Khouyi was very smart about it. He said it but didn't say it. He left all of us just like hanging there. Okay, the example he used was a practical example, but not the main example he was supposed to use, if you remember. And so he confused us. But judging from what he said, one can conclude that he's of the same opinion. That look, at the end of the day, they want us to act as if this is certainty for us. All right, but then he said, La mane, it's okay if you do it. We're like, okay, is it hujjah? Is it not hujjah? Which one is it? Ayatollah Khouyi, come on. Here, Ayatollah Ma'rifah is very clear. Okay, Sheikh Ansari was very clear when he said that there's a possibility that we can have this view. He gave it out, he laid it out the way it was supposed to be. Now, the Lankaranis, we have Ayatollah Fadil Lankarani, the great Marja who passed away a few years ago. Maybe like, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years ago? I don't remember. But that's his son there, Jawad Lankarani now. These ones, they're kind of on the same page, although Jawad Lankarani, the son of Ayatollah Fadil Lankarani, he has some different opinions, but they're not too different than his dad. So I just brought them in one slide here. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Khabar wahid. So you're saying that Ayatollah Ma'rifat, right? What did he say? He said that Khabar wahid, the Imams, what were they after? They were after the way we deal with things. And they were just like, that's okay. You're saying, no, there's a possibility that the Imams were encouraging the narration of hadith because they knew if they encourage it enough, all these hadiths will reach tawatur, or a lot of them will reach tawatur, and that's why we can rely on them. Yeah. إِذَا جَاءَ الْإِحْتِمَالِ, they say, بَطَلَ الْإِسْتِدْلَالِ. If you're able to make that possibility a strong one, a reasonable one, then this possibility here will destroy Ayatollah Ma'rifat's argument. Ayatollah Quresh Ufi, we'll have a slide for him in our next session. That's a very good thing. I haven't seen any of the ulama say it, either because it's a very off thing to say or it's a very good thing to say, but they just couldn't think of it. One of these two. It's a good thing to say. But at the end of the day, I personally think the Imams, if that was what they were after, they should have said it too. If they were encouraging the people to, keep narrating these hadiths so it reaches tawatur, then they would have also said it at least twice, 3 times. We have a saying in Arabic, laukan laban. If it was something that they really wanted, it would have showed itself. Okay? If it was that important. But nowhere do we see the Imam saying, listen, we're encouraging you to keep narrating these hadiths so that it becomes mutawatir for you. No, we don't have that anywhere. All we find is the Imams are saying, hey, there's this, even when people are coming to them, they're like, go to our companions and ask them what the hadiths are in this regard. That's all they're telling them. They're not saying anywhere, hey, make sure that it reaches tawatur. We're doing this so that it reaches tawatur and so on. So that's, I guess, an answer that can be given maybe. But that's a good observation. All right, so going to the Lankaranis, right? The Lankaranis, it says here that kind of they're saying what Ayatollah Ma'rifat says. Kind of, not kind of, like almost exactly. That the average person does not differentiate between types of knowledge that necessitate and do not necessitate action, practical, remember? Fiqhi and non-fiqhi. They will still believe in the validity if it comes from a trusted source, even if that is just one trusted source. Like khabar wahid. A non-practical, here it says necessitate action. I copy-pasted this from another article. So they say, look, people, they follow trustworthy sources, finished. Fiqhi, non-fiqhi, doesn't matter. 1 or 2 or 3 people, even though it's under tawatur, doesn't matter. They will follow. They will give validity to it. Before we had this discussion, this few sessions, this is our 6th one maybe on this matter, on subject. Yeah. Before we even attended these classes, brothers and sisters, it wasn't even a question for us, right? If someone came to us and told us there's a super trusted and super authentic hadith with the proper chain of narrators that says the Imams are ma'soom, let's say. You take it, right? That's what they're saying. The Lankaranis are saying this is how people deal with things, right? That's what it is. Khabar wahid. What do you mean? Oh, no, it's not yaqeen at the end of the day deep in my heart. Yeah, but people will still take it as yaqeen. While certainty is required in the field of beliefs, this does not necessarily extend to the commentary of the Quran. This is an interesting distinction that Ayatollah Sheikh Jawad Lankarani says, Muhammad Jawad Lankarani says, the son. He makes this distinction. He says, look, we can have this in beliefs or not have this in beliefs, but still have it in tafsir. And he has an explanation there I don't want to get into. Yeah. So he says, with tafsiri ones, we can follow. And then he gives other examples of how we follow dhan in other things. He says we follow the dhahir of the Quran. The dhahir is dhanni. We still follow it though. We still believe in what it says. Same thing here. So just because something is dhanni, we can't put it aside, he says. At least in tafsir. And finally, I think this is also an interesting one. I hadn't seen anyone else bring this up, but he brings this up. He says the infallibles should not have said anything on commentary, or if they on tafsir. Or if they had said something, they should have at least said, only if you hear something directly from us, it will be hujjah. What we find is that the Imams, anyone who comes to them, asks them about tafsir, tells them tafsir, doesn't tell them, don't tell anybody this because, it's not hujjah on others. They know that these hadiths are being transmitted. They continue to give tafsir hadiths. He says the fact that the Imams are doing this and not saying anything about it having to necessarily be mutawatir or anything like that shows that the Imams are okay with this. Shows that the Imams are okay with this. At least in tafsir. At least in tafsir. Okay? So these are some of the, or many of the opinions that we have in regards to this whole idea of can khabar wahid be hujjah on us when it comes to non-fiqhi matters. There are others who have also given their ideas on this, and I'm not going to get into those. What I want to do next session, inshallah, is to wrap it up, okay? To wrap it up and just see like what the practical things we can do, even if we are minimalists when it comes to khabar wahid in non-fiqhi matters. How can we benefit? And what have the minimalists said we can do to even benefit from these akhbar ahad, even if we don't believe that they are hujjah when it comes to these non-fiqhi matters, inshallah. Yeah, as I said, I'm going to skip some, like we had Shaykh Haydar Hubbullah. I'll skip him because his is also very extensive, and I think that should be enough of an idea of what is said out there in regards to this. The main arguments you've been exposed to, alhamdulillah. So any questions before we end? Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Salawat. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. السلام على 9 المعصومين من ولد الحسين. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان. الأمان الأمان من فتن الزمان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.